I'm Jamie O'Kane, CPA, Small Business Advanced Tax Planning and Compliance Extraordinaire, and this is the Abundant Beans Podcast, the podcast that takes my love for learning what makes people tick while digging into the good, bad, and ugly of small business ownership. We strive to give you the insight that only those in the trenches of being and working with entrepreneurs can provide. I'd like to welcome to the podcast today, Jamie Lerner. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Jamie. How are you?
You know, of all the Jamies, I have never had another Jamie on the podcast yet.
And I have never had a podcast host named Jamie, so this is the first.
And we both spell it correctly. So
it's amazing.
It's amazing. Jamie is co-author of the book, The Ever-Loving Essence of You, where you can put a fresh spin on just about anything that anyone throws her way. I have so many questions. Her unique and masterful ability to reframe even the most difficult situations is astounding. All of a sudden, your biggest nightmares become your greatest pleasure as she lovingly helps you sift through the contrast and find that small opening of light that quickly becomes your greatest jumping off point for clarity. I love clarity. Huge fan. Unassuming, reassuring, and seemingly without any sense of ego, Jamie Lerner is able to put everyone and everything at ease. I can attest. We had like a 15-minute phone call. I always joy to do a pre-interview, and Jamie was like, amazing. And I was like, oh, I need more Jamie time. It was awesome. Jamie Lerner is an asset to any corporate setting. She's able to untangle the issues in hand and move right along into helping facilitate a solution-based platform for creative, productive, good-feeling collaboration and change. Jamie can most often be seen working with individuals, children, adults, and couples, as well as with small groups. She never positions herself as expert of anything and is always reminding you that it is you who knows the best for yourself always. I love that. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So I want to get a little background first. What was your first job? Like first thing anybody ever paid you to do?
Like way before I went to college and actually I worked at a gas station and I got to wear one of those really cool jumpsuits.
Oh, wow.
And it was red and I pumped gas and it was so awesome. And I just felt like such a rock star.
That is so funny.
Yeah. And it was literally when cigarettes cost like under 50 cents. And I was way too young to be working, but it was great. That was my first job.
That's so fun. And I love how you're like, yep, it was fun. I felt like a rock star in my red jumpsuit.
I did. I loved it.
So I grew up in Colorado. So like having other people pump your gas is not really a thing here, but we used to go to Washington State all the time because my stepdad's from there, and you're not even allowed to pump your own gas in Washington State.
Still?
I think they just changed that.
Wow.
But for the longest time, and people would come out and pump our gas, and I'd be so confused. I'd be like,
yeah,
I'm not allowed to get out. Okay, I'll stay in the car. So how did you decide to become a psychotherapist?
Well, I grew up with a lot of contrast in my household. Mm-hmm. I grew up, my house was a revolving door of international people from all over the world. And so I was always fascinated by interpersonal relationships. And so I knew that I would do something in the field of psychology. So I went and got my master's in social work and had really amazing internships. And then when I graduated, I got hired. My very first job was with a corporation, and they handed me about 25 file folders and 3 keys to 3 different offices in different locations and said, these are your clients and you will be receiving 1 hour of supervision a week. And I was like, okay.
So they just like threw you into patient care.
That was it. And it was an amazing opportunity for me to really, I have to say, be open to receiving from the universe, because even though I had no idea what I was doing, I was really dead on.
That's awesome.
Every moment with those clients. So it was great.
So I want to kind of come back to the word contrast, because you use contrast instead of conflict. Is that correct?
Instead of anything that is negative. So contrast is kind of a very neutral word. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really anything other than what we're wanting for ourselves. That's it.
Okay. I love that. Yeah. So just kind of reframes, because that's what you do. The reframing. Yes. It just kind of reframes it as That's just different than, what you're
Just a
expecting.
moment.
I love
Exactly.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So at
Absolutely.
what point did you decide to shift your practice? So you had a practice for a long time, didn't you?
Yeah, so then after I left that corporate job, I was pregnant and I started my own private practice and I took some of those clients with me. And all along, I have to say, I felt like this was not really right for me. I
Mm-hmm.
never felt 100% comfortable asking people to continue to look back if we're
Mm-hmm.
wanting to move forward. So I kept asking myself the question over and over again, like, when would be the best time and how could I possibly give up this really great practice and do something different? And I realized there's never going to be a good time, but to continue this way, not feeling 100% good about what I'm doing, was not comfortable for me. So I scrapped it
I love it.
and studied and traveled, and now I'm doing something really different and really wonderful, which is just assisting people to assist themselves.
I love that. So you took your background in psychotherapy and tell us about the elements you added and how you shifted
Well,
it.
I added this idea that I always believed in, which is we know best for ourselves. And when we're connected to ourselves and when we can ask ourselves what we're actually wanting, then I think that the sky's the limit. So
So tell us about your book, The Ever Loving Essence of You. I had a few minutes just kind of flip through some of the available online chapters, but tell us about the book and how it's been impacting people.
I think the ever loving essence of you it's a timeless gem. And I think it's a reminder of what we already know, but may have forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
And it just really speaks to kind of reconnecting to yourself
Mm-hmm.
and your inner knowing, your inner being, and creating and recreating the relationship that you have with yourself moment by moment. And I think that that is the foundation for every other relationship we go on to have, and that
Mm-hmm.
includes professionally and
Right.
with every relationship we have with our clients as well. So
Absolutely. I find it interesting that you say reconnecting with our relationship with us, because I do know from being a parent that, what we say to our children is something that they say to themselves. And I read a lot about like the tones we use and all of that and how that's so important because they will start using our voice in their heads or, for themselves. So how do you find that that's true for people? Like they hear their mother's voice or they hear their father's voice or they hear other people's voices and they're not hearing their own?
I do, although I must say that I grew up in a really interesting environment with amazing parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I always heard my own voice louder than anybody else's. And I held to that. Um, so I was impossible to influence. And I believe that children who we see who are difficult or who are bossy or who are rebellious
Mm-hmm.
really can hear their own voices quite clearly.
Mm-hmm.
So um, I think that it is, unfortunately, the parents need to control their children is really their own kind of needing to control themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when we allow people
Mm-hmm.
to become clear about what they're wanting for themselves and become conscious creators, conscious parents,
Mm-hmm.
then I think that it becomes helpful for them first and then they pass it along to their children.
Pretty sure I'm raising one of you.
Yay.
She hears her own voice. She just hears Evie. And I spend a lot of time reminding myself that that's really important. And that it may be completely opposite of what I would need her to be doing or, what needs to be happening. But, her own voice is extremely loud, which she's a lot like me. So she's me at 150%. So it's very
Well,
interesting.
the reason it's so important for us to coach our children inward instead of outward is that they begin to, you're actually helping them guide from within instead of from without. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. There's really nothing outside of ourselves. And when children are able to self-regulate and to look inward and to guide themselves from within, I think that they really do quite well.
So when you say coaching inward, so I ask her all the time, what do you think about this? How do you feel? What's a good solution do you think is for this? Or, we're having problems with, this is kind of a problem. Like we all sat down, we had a family meeting last night because the chores are getting done and I'm about to lose my mind. And I said, what needs to happen, guys? What do you need to lose, or what do we need to add? Or, because we try to kind of do a push and a pull for our kids, because they respond to both generally, or the older one does. So coaching inward, does that mean, letting the children or asking the children what they hear or what they think is a good solution?
Or what they're needing for themselves, or what they're wanting for themselves, and also to give children the notion that there are no consequences. There's just an outcome. So whatever happens, it's fine. You choose to go out on a school night and you have homework. That's a choice you're making. If you think that's a great choice for you, you should do that. The outcome of that, it's not a consequence. But, then you're in a position, your child's in a position to then assess the next time if they would like a different outcome, if the outcome is something other than what they were thinking it was going to be.
I love that. We really try to do love and logic. And it's interesting what happens when you don't save them from the outcome or from whatever the consequence is. But yeah, I actually tell my kids they get one save a school year, and to use it wisely. And my daughter used it, I think, in the first couple weeks. I was like, this is your one. I'm bringing you your whatever. But the rest of it is the homework doesn't get done or whatever. We're here. We're here to help you. We're here to facilitate. But, it's up to you to make sure it gets done.
Or not.
Or not done.
Or not. And that's the other thing. If they look to us and we're not judging whatever the outcome is, then they get to sit with it and decide how important it is to them. And ultimately, we want to raise genuine communicators. We want to raise genuine human beings.
Yeah, I want them to also be really good at making their own choices, and understanding what happens on that back end potentially for them. Awesome. So talk to us about one of your favorite topics is creating endless opportunities. And I love the word opportunities. So tell us a little bit like what that looks like for people and how you facilitate that.
Well, I don't facilitate
how you help them facilitate that.
I think we ask people all day long what they want, and they tell us all day long what they don't want. And it's interesting. When you focus on what you don't want, you get more of what you do not want. So you begin to ask people to think about, what they do want. And when they are engaged in that process of feeling comfortable enough, because you've given them permission to do something that probably they have been scolded for their whole life, then they begin to see all the opportunities that come from their own personal desires. And usually those desires come from contrast, things that have happened or things that they've had that really have not felt good to them. So from contrast, we get really good clarity. And with clarity, then we have this amazing opportunity to start consciously creating our lives for ourselves. Cool. For ourselves, because we cannot do this for anyone else.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you see that, because I will ask people about their accounting pain points or whatever, and I always get some weird answer. But when I sit down and ask people, what do you want? What are your goals? Like if we could hand you anything, or if we could help you get towards anything, a lot of the time they're just like, nobody's ever asked me that. And then a couple days later, I'll get an email or something and they'll be like, sorry, I froze up. And I'm like, no judgment. Obviously, I don't, I know that I ask questions that a lot of others, ACPAs don't, and just people don't, period. But they're always like, there's this one thing that I do kind of want, or like this one thing I've been thinking about or whatever. And they're like, but nobody asks me this question. And so they kind of have to think about it. They have to dig down and figure out what it is they want. And it's really interesting to see their reaction to being asked that question.
Yes. And so you are facilitating them to create endless opportunities.
I love it.
Yeah.
Let's see. So how do you help people reframe contrasts or obstacles?
A lot of people want to talk about where they are
Mm-hmm.
and why.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it also has to do with what happened to them long ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I really encourage people to look at whatever it is that they're looking at back then from their adult here and now perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Because as an adult, you're in a different position, and whatever it is that happened to you back then looks very different. So how can we reframe? How can you think about whatever it is that you're thinking about in a way that really is a reflection of your here and now?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really nice reframe for people, because people get stuck in this memory of themselves being young and small and voiceless and powerless. And so if you can reframe it from where you are today, and probably where you are today is a great reflection of what you went through, but in a very positive way.
Yeah.
So, you're powerful, you're strong, you're clear
Resilient.
about what you're not having anymore.
Yeah.
And that feels really good when you can think about it that way. So that's like kind of an instant reframe for people.
That's so crazy. What is one of the hardest things people, or what is one of the things people have the hardest time reframing, do you find?
I think relationship with parents that they had wished would have been different. And I think to have people understand that really everyone did the best they could. So your parents didn't not give you what you needed. They probably couldn't. Yeah. So for whatever reason, to let people off the hook. And that is really hard for people, because people get stuck in principle and resentment, and they don't want to forgive, and they don't want to let go, and they don't want to take responsibility for their own lives. They would rather blame and use that as their excuse not to move forward, which is a choice. So I tell people, if you are choosing to stay stuck and you're consciously choosing that, then you are no longer a victim. And that's a powerful choice to make, but own it.
Yeah. I find it very interesting. So I think you know this, but I'm also a birth doula. And I always say, not making a choice on something is a choice, right? So deciding to like not move forward on something, or deciding that you don't want to pick A or B is still a choice. You don't have to pick A or B. Sometimes you choose C, because that not making a choice is a choice.
But a lot of people like to feel like they're a victim, because then they don't need to take any personal responsibility for anything.
And they can still be stuck. They can just continue to be stuck.
And they can be stuck. But to take responsibility that you're not making a choice feels pretty good. Like I'm choosing right now to not make a choice, and that feels good. Yeah, okay.
That's what I choose.
More power to you.
That's fine.
Yeah. So
it's interesting, especially, I've seen a lot of, how people make decisions through being a birth doula. That actually was super eye-opening for me, because it's different than being doing taxes and accounting. People still make choices that are very interesting to me there, but in birth, it's just a whole different just a whole different ballgame. And I learned a lot about personalities and how people make choices, and what's behind the choices. People see things differently than others for a lot of different reasons, and make different choices for a lot of different reasons. And it really was eye-opening to me, because I've always been one of those more judging personalities. I don't think I'm that anymore, because I just realized that everybody has their own things and their own stuff, and they're going to make those choices through their own lenses.
And as they should. And guess what? It has nothing to do with you. So mind your business.
Exactly. And that's exactly it. A lot of times people will be like, what would you do? And I'm like, I'm not
nothing
giving
to
birth.
do with you. Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with me. What you're choosing is for you. What I would choose is different, because I have different experiences.
And I think we are so used to being told what to do, especially children, that when you ask them, well, what would you like to do, or how would you like to handle it? I think that they really are thrown by that. So it's good. You're preparing them for asking themselves those questions. Yeah. All through their life.
Yeah, we try to do that around here as much as possible.
Right. So good. Yay.
I want them to be responsible, good citizens, and to be mentally healthy. Like that's really important for me, is physically and mentally healthy and happy in themselves.
Yes.
And that's what's the most important to me. So
Right.
they can make mac and cheese and they can cook and stuff too, but they're self-sufficient. So let's see. I love your reframing to opportunities. What opportunities are many of us missing on a daily basis?
I think that most people don't know that being happy is an option.
Mm.
So when you actually allow people to think about the option of being happy
Mm-hmm.
or creating their life consciously,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's huge for people, because once again, people get stuck in this victim mode and really feel like they're a victim to everything, their job, their relationship, their children, society. I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
So, do they want to take personal responsibility? Oftentimes not. But if you could be happy and feel really good and connected to yourself and create the life you want, is that like a good trade-off? Yes, it is. And you feel really powerful when you step into the place of making choices for yourself, about yourself.
Mm-hmm. Choosing where to put your time, where to put
Yes.
your energy.
Yes, and I think women, especially mothers, they use their relationships with their children and their families. It's excuses to not do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's unavoidable.
Yeah. It's very interesting because as a society, we expect mothers to put themselves aside a lot of the time. And when you don't, people are confused sometimes.
Well, it
Or
depends how you feel about it, because I
right.
think if you feel really good about what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing and how you're doing it, people have nothing to say about that. They
Yeah.
really don't. They probably
Yeah.
look at you and all, and they go, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I think it's very interesting. But I know way too many women who have lost themselves in being a mother, or in a lot of judgment about how they're supposed to do that, or what that looks like, or that's supposed to look like, I guess. I am not that. I don't know if you noticed. Pretty confident in my choices to work and run a business. And, my kids, we have an amazing support system. And I tell people that all the time. I'm not Superwoman. I just know what my priorities are.
And so when you do put yourself first and
Mm-hmm.
foremost, and they tell you to do that when you get on an airplane,
right,
when you have small children,
right,
then you are available to assist others in all kinds of ways. And I think that's wonderful that you're the living, breathing example of that. So
yeah, I want to be that for both of my kids. I think it's really important for them to see the balance.
Yeah.
My parents weren't really good at balance. It was a whole thing, but it's something I'm trying to be better at than.
That's wonderful.
At least to show them what that looks like.
Yes.
So how does someone change their storyline?
Well, first they have to know what their story is. I think that we go on and on and on about what our story is, and we don't even know what we're saying most of the time. And the more drama and trauma that we can include in that story, the bigger the audience is and the more attention we get, and it just takes on a whole life of its own. So if we can ask ourselves, what is the story that we are telling ourselves and others, and is it even true? I would say that 90% of it is not even true, at least here and now in your adult life. So what part of that story feels good when you're telling it? And if it does feel good, you should keep telling it, because it probably feels good as you're living it. But for most people, it doesn't feel good when you're telling it. So I ask people to just change maybe a line of it or a word of it, or put in some grammar or something to change the tone of it. Because the story that we're telling should be, or could be, the reflection of the life that we would like to be living. So how do you want your life to look? And is it a fairy tale? No, it's not. It's about you creating your life moment by moment. And by speaking it, you will very quickly step into it.
It's so crazy how our brains work like that.
Yes, It really works. So what you think about is what you get,
right,
all day long.
a good friend of mine, I don't know, she read a book at one point, and all she did to really kind of change her mindset and flip her life around was repeat to herself, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself. Like she would be having a negative thought and she'd just be like, I love myself, I love
That's
myself,
great.
I love myself. And in like 5 years, she went from like like in an apartment with 10 other people to like $1 million company.
There you go. Yeah.
It was just that reframing and that consistent, just over and over and over again, mindset shift.
And becoming reacquainted with her own voice.
Absolutely. Talking to our own selves positively is so important. I love it. So good. So because I'm a CPA and it's almost tax season, I have to ask you this question for all of us busy business people. How do people turn their to-do lists or their tasks and that overwhelm? How do we reframe that to opportunity?
We procrastinate because procrastination is our greatest friend, even though it's got the worst rap. So yeah, that's what we do. We procrastinate. Yep. And if we are not feeling inspired to do something, we set it aside until we feel the inspiration to do it. That's what we do.
I love it. Because then it's just like, this is the thing that needs to get done right now.
But nothing needs to get done. So as soon as you give yourself permission not to do it, guess what? You'll actually want to do it.
It's so true.
Yes.
It's so true. It's so funny. I will procrastinate on doing one thing by finishing something that needed to get done. Because it's like, okay, now I'm in the frame of mind to finish this. Okay. Or now this is more important than this.
The thing is that when we do something and we're not in alignment with it, the outcome is not successful. So to sit down and to push ourselves to do something when we're not feeling inspired to do it, I guarantee that you're not giving your all and the outcome is not going to be as it could have been.
And it's going to drain us. It's going to drain us energy wise. I do find if I'm like pushing myself to get something done that I really don't want to do, I'm exhausted afterwards because it takes such an energy expenditure.
And that energy is pretty negative. So give yourself time to get inspired. Go eat some ice cream. I don't know. It's different for everyone, but I love procrastination. I really do.
I love that. I think you're probably the only guest that's ever going to say that. Yeah. We work with a lot of productivity people too. But I love that. And I think we also, a lot of the time, can just say that thing doesn't actually need to get done.
This is true.
We can just cross it off or decide it's not important right now.
Yes, exactly. And, the quicker you cross it off, it's not important. It's interesting. The quicker you come back to it.
That's great. I love it. And I'm going to start being like, well, Jamie said I could procrastinate on it.
It actually feels really good to give yourself permission to procrastinate.
It does. And I try really hard to pick things that I know I'm going to have the energy for that day. And to only pick enough that I think I can actually get crossed off. That's something I'm working with a mindfulness coach right now too. And he's really kind of helping me dial down my type A tendencies to think that I can get a lot more done than I can. Because then I just live in this overwhelm, like, so much to do. But it's like, no, I'm getting stuff done and it's amazing. So it's really good. Procrastination. Awesome. So one of your key services is a texting service. So tell us about that service and how you help people with that service.
It is called the Quickie.
I love it.
A lovely texting option. So, and it came as a result of requests from some clients. And so people just buy blocks of time and they just text with me. They text me a question, and as they're texting me the question, it's so interesting how they are often answering their own question. And then I will text back to them. And it is just giving them an opportunity to really tap back into themselves, and I really become the conduit.
I really love that.
It's a great service, and I really like the abbreviated emotional component that texting takes, because you do everything kind of it's just, it's a very nice way to get right to whatever it is that you need to ask the question about.
Because you can just
excess words.
Do it quickly.
Yes.
And then it's funny because people will send me an email. So it's really interesting because I feel like people think about things for a really long time. And then I'll either get a text question or they'll send me a message or I'll get an email or whatever. But generally they figured it out, like in the process of writing the email or in the process of like, they're like, oh wait, I just answered my own question. Or like they'll send the text and they'll be like, you know what? I decided, well, I'm waiting for you to get back to me. I'm just going to see if I can find my own answer.
There you go.
And I always love those. I'm always just like, great, let me know if I can, I'm here anytime you need to do that. Right.
Yeah.
Because I think it's gratifying on the other end too, because people have the ability to just be like, I needed to get this out right now. And I've already found my own solution.
There you go. And 90% of the time we know the answer to, and pretty much any question we're going to ask somebody.
That's so great. And I think that's really true. A lot of the time, like I'll be just trying to mull over something and I'll type it up on Facebook or like, I'll, put it in one of my forums or whatever. Cause I'm like, I have a question about this, that, and the other thing, but I'm just like, but do I think I know which way I want to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You do. I always know. Maybe you don't know how or why you know, but you always know for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
Not for others, for yourself. Of course, in terms of taxes and being helpful, you can offer that expertise. But other things, I think that, people know. They just know for themselves.
Yeah. I think there's those people who don't want an answer, though, also. Like they'll ask a question and every solution is not good enough or doesn't fit somehow. Those are the people that drive me absolutely crazy. But I think the answer is they don't want an answer.
So then what is your response to those people?
I always ask them, what do you think needs to happen here?
And what do they say?
They're usually just like, I don't know. That's why I asked the question. I'm like, okay. You got a ton of answers here. Do any of them resonate or is there something you wanted the answer to be?
We have a diagnosis for that, but I won't tell you what it is.
Oh, I want to know. Is it asshole?
No, it's borderline.
Oh, we know about that one. We call them assholes. They ask questions, but it's just a black hole.
There you go.
There we go. Borderline. I like borderline better, but I'm not trying to diagnose people. Okay. Well, thank you so much. So before I ask my last question, what is the easiest way for people to find you?
I have a website, yes. www.jamie-lerner.com. And everything is on there. There's a million podcasts and there's so much free information. And if you're the least bit interested, check it out.
Great. And we'll link all that in the description boxes. I'm sure like everybody else does. And then also Jamie is happy to offer a 15-minute free trial for anybody who wants to do the texting sessions, which is awesome. And we'll get that all linked in the description boxes also. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So final question for you. What is the one thing that everyone can do to move their life towards opportunity?
Take personal responsibility and trust themselves.
I love that. Trust themselves. I love a lot of just like you were saying, trust that you have the answer for yourself.
Yes.
It's so powerful. It's so powerful to be in your own, to hear your own voice and that be the right answer for you.
And sometimes you hear the answer and you just say to yourself, I know this is what I should do for myself and I'm not doing it. Okay. And that's powerful too.
Yeah.
And you're saying, I'm not doing it. Okay.
My voice over here says I need a massage. So after this, I'm going to go make my appointment.
Go do it.
Because that needs to happen. And I know that it needs to happen.
But hold on. What advice can you give us for people going into tax season?
Oh, Lord. I think patience with your tax person. We have had just so much so much coming down the pipe from Congress the last 2 years, and IRS is still figuring it out. We're all still figuring it out. My biggest piece of advice, and it's always this, is get outside eyes on your business and your taxes. You don't know what you don't know in those realms unless this is what you do. And having the outside eyes from your advisors and listening to them, if it resonates with you, because I love that. Like, if their answer resonates with what you think your answer is, which generally it will if you've picked the right advisors, because they know you well enough, or they know where you want to go well enough, that they're giving you the answer you need to move that way. So my biggest piece of advice is always outside eyes.
Okay, that's great.
Outside eyes on your books, outside eyes on your taxes, outside eyes on your goals. Because you know where you want to go, but you have to tell people where you want to go.
Right.
So we can help you get there.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. I like having people ask me my questions on my own podcast.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Jamie, it has been so amazing. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm going to do the texting service.
Oh, good. Thank you. And enjoy your massage.
I will. I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go make my appointment right now.
All right.
Because I know you'll probably hold me to that. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening or watching. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, or wherever you prefer to listen. If you learned something and found some useful information to apply to your business today, please consider giving us a thumbs up and a review. Until next week, be abundant.